Good evening, folks. I would like to, with the gavel, call the regular Kimberley City Council meeting to order for Monday, April the 24th, held here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. Do we have any late items, Maurice?
There's no late items, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt? Thank you, Councillor Cairns, and Councillor Royer seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council on March the 27th. Councillor Roberts moves and Councillor Maguire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. I should mention that Councillor Maguire is joining us via Zoom this evening, and Councillor Dunneback is away. All right, first up, we have a delegation this evening, the Kimberley Public Library, and it is a budget presentation by Chair Greg Bradley. Greg. Welcome. Is this the annual or the semi-annual event?
Somewhere in between, yeah.
One or the other.
It's the year and a half event, I guess.
Anyway, it's good to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present the library budget for this year. My name is Greg Bradley, and I'm the chair of the Kimberley Public Library Board. I have a couple brief comments about the library, before I get to the budget. I will keep them brief. As you know, 2022 was a year of transition for the library, with some unanticipated management and staffing changes early in the year. And then there were, of course, some COVID-related protocols for part of the year that had some operational effect early in 2022. Despite the challenges that were faced, I'm pleased to say that staff always performed their duties exceptionally well, and customer service for patrons and the delivery programs proceeded unaffected by these challenges. In fact, as we moved out of COVID restrictions, demand for services and programs increased noticeably, and staff met that demand with an expanded slate of outreach and on-site program offerings. A multitude of events, including children's story times, Lego Club, robotic coding, play and learn sessions, technology workshops, craft sessions, and author presentations, fill out a pretty active event calendar at the library. All these sessions are well attended, and many now have wait lists. Of interest, at least to me, maybe to you, there were 535 new library accounts opened in 2022, which is a 20% increase over the pre-COVID numbers in 2019, and a higher annual count than I've seen since I've been chair. Our patron group was also very active last year, with over 39,925 items circulated in 2022, which works out to an average of over 150 items per day. So staff were busy, patrons were reading. 2023 is well underway with a number of changes as well. I believe Councillor McBain has informed Council of the hiring of our new director, and we're happy to be welcoming Tegan Madge, who will be starting next week. And Tegan joins us from Canmore, where she was recently the children's librarian there. I would be remiss if I didn't use this forum to mention Sharon Seward, who is our longest serving staff member and who will be retiring this week after 37 years of outstanding service. Sharon's contributions will be celebrated this Friday at the library from 2 to 4 p.m. and everyone is welcome to join us. And I'd like to extend my invitation to all of you. With that, I'll proceed with the budget presentation unless there are any questions at this time.
Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Okay. I won't go through the line items, line by line in detail, as most have little or no change from previous years. I will highlight some of the more significant changes, and I would welcome any questions on any line items that you have an interest in. The revenue side for us is, of course, an expenditure for the city, and we're showing a proposed upward adjustment of 6.5% for the city and RDEK contributions, with the proposed city grant of $186,550. I recognize that this increase is outside of where our typical request is, but it is predicated on the effect that inflation has had on our costs and also on our desire at the board level to modify staffing to meet some of the patron demand that I mentioned earlier. The BC provincial budget grant is showing as unchanged, and that is the case still for our annual provincial operating grant. Subsequent to the presentation of this budget, and I think Councillor McBain passed on this news, on March 31st, we were informed by the province that our library will be the recipient of a one-time enhancement grant of $112,195.65. And that grant is to be used over 3 years from 2023 through to 2025. This is, of course, very welcome news to us at the library board and to staff, and I'm sure to patrons. And it will allow us some flexibility for service delivery for the next 3 years. My enthusiasm is tempered a little bit by the fact that the base provincial operating grant remains unchanged for this year. And there is also no commitment from the provincial level as to what will happen post 2025. Other significant revenue items from the budget. The Friends of the Library, they're showing a budget decrease down to $8,000. Now, the $13,000 from last year is really a bit of an outlier, and the $8,000 grant from the Friends is probably more in keeping with where their annual contributions are. And we always receive the grants from the Friends with great thanks for the work they do. We, expect coming out of COVID, some increase in room rentals and whatnot, but on the final line item of the total revenue, it's not much of an adjustment. So our total budgeted revenue is $338,406, which is a 3.6% increase from 2022. On the expenditure side, there is some juggling of numbers from last year, just because of some bookkeeping changes to align with some accounting codes. So, for example, kind of midway down the expenditures list, you'll see photocopy expenses, code 6351 is now separated from the lease 6352. The total budget amount remains the same at $5,000. It's just broken up across 2 line items, and so it kind of creates an odd year-over-year change. There are some other line items which I'll mention that do show some real changes from last year. Starting from the top of our expenditures list are the audio-visual materials, and that's showing a doubling in the budget from last year. And where that comes from is we were pretty conservative last year at the board level with some expenditures that we made or didn't make last year. And so this year is to some degree some catch up on books and AV materials and periodicals and magazines. So you will see increases year over year, really based on kind of catching up for some deferred spending from last year. So another example of that is books moving up from 25,000 to 35,000, where actuals last year were just over $18,000. And so again, kind of building up that collection to where we want it to be and where our new director would expect it to be as well. Another item that's moving up a fair bit is professional development, moving from $1,200 to $2,400. And again, with conferences and events picking up post-COVID, we expect that staff will be able to take advantage of some of those opportunities. And, we think investing in staff is always a good move anyways. And so we're happy to make that adjustment to the budget. Payroll is, of course, our main expenditure at the library. We have a full complement of staff, and we will have, with our new director, management in place as well. And so here we're showing a 4.5% increase from 2022. The sum of all of that gives us a total expenditure of $367,850, which is just over a 10% increase from 2022. It does give us an overall operating deficit for 2023 of $29,444, which the library is in a cash position to be able to handle adequately. With that, I conclude the budget presentation and welcome any questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks very much for that, Greg. Thanks. Go ahead, Councillor McBain.
Well, I don't have any budget questions, Greg, but I did want to just publicly thank you for the work that you did. I've said a lot of things, privately to other board or to other council members and stuff about your leadership through last year. I can't remember how you phrased it at the top of the meeting, challenging or something like that, but it was a tumultuous year. I thought your leadership was fantastic, and you really did a heck of a job through some pretty difficult situations. So I just wanted to recognize that publicly because I really appreciated it.
Thanks. I appreciate
I'll let
that,
others
Jason.
ask.
I would certainly say I wasn't the only one at the board level who put in some extra time and some extra work this year, and certainly staff as well. And so as a group, as a team, we got through it, and I think we've come out in a better space as well.
So, thanks for those comments, Councillor McBain. Further, Council. So, Greg, just to clarify, the new money from the province is not in here. That's incremental.
No, it's not, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the letter kind of came as a surprise, as they do, on March. Actually, we received it on April 1, dated March 31st.
Well, I think that the fact that it came out and you talked about some of the uncertainty, associated with the province, I think this was a recognition on their part that, things are lagging a bit. And I think it is a show of confidence. And I do know that there is a lot of advocacy from our regions at the UBCM level for the province to not only continue, but to significantly increase the amount of funding that libraries are getting across the region and the province. So hopefully that shows itself here in the next little while.
Always hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, hearing no further comments. Thanks very much, Greg.
Okay.
Appreciate the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Now, do we need to a motion to receive?
If I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah, council is obligated to the Library Act to approve the library budget every year, either as presented or as amended. Typically, this presentation is a lot earlier in the year. We've got the financial plan bylaw and for consideration of first three readings right after this, and it includes an increase of 1.5%. That's historically what we've had in there. That's the increase to match the policy that the operating grants that the Arts Council Historical Society receive, for example. So, I mean, the timing is difficult. If council wants to grant the full increase, the 6.5%, I'd suggest what we do is just receive this report tonight, go through with the reading of the financial bylaws, bring it back to a subsequent meeting with a resolution. We would have to fund this from a surplus or reserve. It's too late to change the tax rate. I don't like doing that with operating type expenditures, but for this year, if that's what council wants to do, I'd suggest that's the road we go down. And then next year, we get the presentation in earlier so that we can take it into consideration when we're developing the financial plan bylaws.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. Greg, what would the implications be if we chose to continue down the path that we're on here tonight with the financial plan approval? And at this point, you ended up with a 1.5%.
Yep. You'd ask me kind of pre-grant for loans. Yeah, I think the grant from the province kind of was a bit of a game changer for us, certainly.
Okay.
And so there is more flexibility this year than what we would have had before. Having said that, though, the provincial special grant is a special grant. It's not an operating grant to our operating funds. Our baseline level of funding from the province has remained static for a number of years, and that hasn't changed. So that is a significant concern, kind of outside of this special grant as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, under difference, the reason I'm asking is that the path, as Jim just described, to kind of go down with this is a little murky.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that we put the library in peril for convenience by any stretch, but I'm just trying to understand kind of where the middle ground is here on what makes sense.
Yeah, you know, operationally, we'd be in an okay space this year. I would anticipate, not to presuppose the board discussion, is that the discussion next year would be to kind of recoup, per se, the increase that we had proposed this year.
Okay, so we'll have this conversation during your presentation? Or,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I suppose, I mean, council could have a discussion now, and if you know, if direction from council is that we proceed with the 1.5%, then you could pass a resolution saying that the library budget is approved without adjustment to the city grant. Or if you'd like to have some more discussion about it, I would bring this back. I would proceed with first readings of the financial plan bylaw and eventually, and then bring a staff report back subsequent meeting to have some further discussion and get some direction from council.
okay, so council, what's your pleasure? No? Yeah, no, that's cool. There's no conflict. So, go ahead, Sue.
I think there's value and we've come this far in understanding where we're at, and it would make sense to me to complete that conversation, work through it just now, but as far as moving forward with the 1.5%, and doing that at this point rather than going back and fixing it later, I'm not sure about the implications. And even if that's, yeah, it makes sense to me to resolve it now.
Okay, further? Go ahead, Woody.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, based on the 20% increase in usership this year, I'm seeing this as a priority to fund properly. And I'm under the impression those special funds are for development of programming outside their normal operating. So I wouldn't want to see that money used towards operating.
Okay, thank you for that. Further? Go ahead, Councillor Robertson.
I kind of agree with that. I think we have, like everything else in the community, when it's growing, we need to support it. And I think I'm with you. I'm trying to figure out the way that we can manage that in a way that doesn't put us in peril for finances being established and approved in time for submission. So I guess if I could just clarify the stages, the first stage would be going ahead with today and looking into it in the immediate future, or coming to some conclusion for the entire amount today? Or what does that, just give me the 3 steps.
Yeah, if you could just repeat yourself for
Yeah.
the 3rd time.
Yeah, so if council wants to give something more than the 1% or the 1.5% that's in the five-year financial plan coming up next, I would suggest that we do that after the financial plan bylaw is adopted. To do it now, we would be reading the financial plan bylaw, amending the bylaw. We'd be reading it a second and third time as amended. If you wanted to do it through tax collection, we'd also be amending the tax rates bylaw, and it would just be, it'd be messy trying to do it tonight. But if that's the direction council wants to go, something more than the 1.5%, I'd suggest that I bring a staff report back and possibly invite Greg to come sometime in May. Get direction from council to amend the bylaw at that point. Fund it through.
So the motion on the floor then would be receipt?
Receipt tonight.
Yeah. Do I have a mover? Yep, Councillor McBain, Councillor Royer seconds. Any further discussion? All right, that motion is passed. Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
Oh, that was it. I was voting.
Bit of a delay there, Sandra. Thanks very much, Craig.
Thank you.
I'm not exactly sure where we ended up, after all of that. But please stay tuned. The library will not be disadvantaged, let's put it that way. Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, we have the 2023-2027 5-year financial plan bylaw for consideration of the first 3 readings, which is the motion. Could I have a mover? Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Karen seconds. All right. We better not have any discussion until you've had a chance to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Joe.
And I'm not going to have too much to say with this. Council has been listening to me talk budget since November 21st was the first budget meeting. So you're all well versed in what's included in the document that's in front of you, being the 5-year financial plan bylaw number 2742. I'm just going to go through and hit some of the highlights here. The first section of the report speaks to the legislative requirements. That being that the 5-year financial plan bylaw has to be adopted by May 15th of each year. The legislation sets out the revenue and expenditure categories that must be detailed in the financial plan bylaw. Those are included in the wording there in the staff report. As far as highlights go, the capital plan was a challenge this year. The capital expenditures. Every year as part of the process, we go through the current 5-year financial plan, looking at years 2 through 5. With reference to current unit costs for the capital projects. And as council knows, there was some big increases in some of the projects by up to 80%. So we had to do a lot of shuffling in the 5-year financial plan as far as the capital projects went. We didn't end up kicking anything out of the 5-year plan. We ended up pushing some things back a little bit. And as we're finding out now, as some of the tenders come in for some of those projects, some of the prices are coming lower than anticipated. So that's good news. On the operating side of things, we'll talk about it a little bit more in the tax rates bylaw, but we required a 3.9% increase to the tax collection in order to fund the revenues and expenditures that we've been discussing since we started this process. On the average single-family residential dwelling assessed at just over $506,000 this year. That equates to just over $100 a year, about $101 is what that 3.9% equals. We did have about $32.5 million in new construction this year, non-market change, which was primarily made up of new residential construction. And that resulted in new tax revenue of about $183,000. That really helps when you start talking about the tax increase. If we wouldn't have had that, the increase would have been 5 rather than 3.9 that we've got in front of council tonight. So I've just made a note of the wastewater treatment plant being the most significant capital project identified in the 5-year plan. It's $95,000, or sorry, I wish it was 95,000. It's $95 million to be constructed over 3 years. So yeah, so $95 million bucks, and it's being funded from a combination of borrowing, grants, and some reserves. We're still waiting to hear back from the province for the grant on that. They indicated spring of 2023, so we're hoping to hear soon, hopefully in May sometime. If we don't get that grant, it's going to change the look of this 5-year plan. I've also listed a number of projects here, rating requests that have come in since council was last presented with the 5-year financial plan. I'm not going to go through each one of these in detail. Most of the capital items on here, council has had reports come forward from the operations department on various projects, and resolutions have already been passed approving these. So we're just formalizing it by pulling it into the bylaw and asking council to ultimately approve the projects by including them in the bylaw. On the operating side of things, the biggest change was the receipt of the Growing Communities Fund grant in the amount of $3.14 million March of this year. That we're informed a little bit earlier on that we were getting a grant, but we really had no idea of the scale. So what we're doing with that this year, conditions is we're putting that money into a statutory reserve fund. We've created a separate bank. I'm going to be bringing a bylaw forward to council in a little while here to just formalize the statutory reserve. Later on this year, even or once we kind of quantify council to future 5-year financial plan bylaws. There's lots of things that we can invest that money in. Yeah, so we'll get council's approval, obviously, before we spend any of that money. I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail as far as the bylaw either. It's a long document. There's a lot of information in there. It does provide policy statements and objectives for the various funding sources, things like a borrowing. So any questions on anything specific to the bylaw or the information in the staff report, I'm happy to answer council's questions.
All right, thank you, Jim. Go ahead, Councillor Roy.
That $3 million, can it be used if you're over budget 1 year? Like infrastructure over budget, can it be used for that down the road if we're over?
Yeah, if we've got for example, a capital project and the bids come in over, we can pull from that reserve. Yeah, it's fairly broad, the conditions on that, but it's really, I think, meant to be tied to infrastructure. So
Further. At one of the presentations at AKBLG this last couple of days was from the UBCM folks responsible for granting. And one of the questions from the floor came up with respect to, our unprecedented inflation, the impact on the projects. And the question was basically, can we get topped up for cost increases that happened prior to being able to implement? And the answer came back pretty much the same as, can we get a retroactive grant? And the answer was absolutely not. So when it comes to funding these overages, we are, definitely on our own for doing that. Now, having said that, it's good news that we're starting to see some of these projects come in under budget, and that's going to give us a buffer to be able to do a little bit of balancing, between the various projects. So it really feels like we're in a better space right now than what we were 12 months ago.
yeah, I would agree for sure.
Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I just request that somebody grab Jim a new mic because he's running out of batteries.
Thanks for that, Woody. Kevin. Oh, hey, Kevin. Did you have your hand up? No. Okay, cool. Thanks for pointing out Councillor Dunneback has joined us via Zoom. Okay, any further comments or questions, Councillor? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next up, we have the City of Kimberley Parcel Tax Imposition Bylaw for consideration of first 3 readings. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Royer moves and Councillor Roberts seconds. Jim, you got your mic all set there? You could take the podium.
Okay, I think we're set till this battery dies.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the next bylaw in front of council is the Kimberley Parcel Tax Imposition Bylaw, which of course is the relates to the Aquatic Center. So as council is aware, each year we go through an exercise of determining what the operating deficit is at the pool. We budget for that. So, and then we set the Aquatic Center parcel tax at a level where we collect enough revenue to fund the operating deficit at the pool and also fund the associated debt payments. from the loan that was entered into when we first built that facility. Paid out in 2005. So because we're working off of budget numbers, we're never going to, 100% accurately budget for what the actual operating expenditures and revenues are going to be. So in 2022, at the end of the year, we actually ended up collecting $68,000 more revenue than we needed to fund that facility, which went into a reserve. So we're pulling that money back out of the reserve this year because the only thing that money is used for is to fund the aquatic center. So the result of that was it ended up reducing the parcel tax by about $14.56 from what it would have been. But given what the budget figures are for the aquatic center, we're anticipating the deficit is going to be around $1,042,000. That's including the loan pay. So based on the number of properties and the balance that was in the aquatic center reserve, we set the aquatic center levy at $208.50 this year. Last year it was $205.67, so not much of an increase there. And the aquatic center parcel tax is levied on every piece of property within the municipal boundary, regardless of asset or property classification. So yeah, if council has any questions, please go ahead.
All right, council. One comment, I guess, Jim. It would appear that, we're getting post-COVID, we're getting a lot more use out of the facility than we did pre-COVID, it appears. At $350,000 in revenue, that has to be one of the highest years, I think, that we've had in period.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're heading in the right direction. I think it's important to note that, aquatic centers will never break even. It's just one of those amenities that costs a lot of money to operate versus the amount that can be charged, and still have it as a public facility. But that's okay. The fact is that vibrant communities, pretty much all of them have an aquatic center, and it's one of the reasons why the community, remains as vibrant as it is. So it's all pretty good news all the way around. Okay, last call for questions. Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next up, we have the City of Kimberley 2023 tax rates bylaw for consideration of first three readings. Mover, please. Councillor Cairns moves, and Councillor McBain seconds. Do you have any further comments on this, Jim? 3.9% bottom line, which is some amazing financial management on the part of you, your staff, and the senior managers as you've been putting the budget together. I think the range, if I remember correctly, between communities either throughout the region or of similar size was anywhere from 5 to 12%, with averages kind of in the mid-range there. So thank you for all the great work that's been done on that. Thank you. Okay, hearing no questions, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have the building code update and proposed changes to the building bylaw. And that the motion is that council approve first, second, and third readings of this particular bylaw. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire moves, and Councillor McBain seconds. Go ahead, Troy. Please summarize what we're doing here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we're proposing here today is just a few amendments to the building bylaw. This is in response to some recent changes at the provincial level that'll be impacting the BC building code, and we wanted to make sure that our bylaw remains in alignment with BC building code direction. So the main one being, or the more urgent change that's happening that's going to trigger this report at this time is some changes in the implementation of the BC Energy Step Code. So for quite some time, Kimberley's been a recognized leader in the implementation of the STEP code, and we've seen some really good success in all the new construction, particularly on the Part 9 standard building side. So your smaller residential buildings and small commercial buildings, where we've been requiring a minimum step 3 on the energy step code for a couple of years now, and having good success there. The more immediate changes though on the building code side apply to Part 3 buildings, which are larger commercial buildings, larger multi-unit residential buildings, where our requirement there has been only step 1, which is the first step, obviously, of the energy step code. And the BC building code will be requiring step 2 as of May 1st. So that's the kind of more urgent amendment there. Back on the Part 9 standard building side, we're recommending that we amend our bylaw to require step 4, so that increase from step 3 to step 4 to be effective for any permits if issued after January 1st of 2024. And as I mentioned, our program to date has been quite successful, and we've seen some really good uptake and implementation across the board on new projects. Our local builders and designers and everything are getting very experienced with that. And so good, in fact, that the majority of all of our buildings are already receiving or achieving step 4. So we don't think that there's going to be too much more growing pains or learning to happen to get there as a minimum requirement. Like I said, and that won't actually take effect until permits issued after January, or as of January 1. And then similarly with the changes at the provincial level, they're introducing what's called the zero carbon step code. So that's trying to look towards the not just the energy efficiency of buildings, but the carbon emissions associated with building operations. And because that's a very new program, we're recommending that we recognize the zero carbon step code in our bylaw, and but only implement at the initial stage or initial tier of the measure only. The zero carbon step code remains a voluntary opt-in program for local governments, so we're recommending we opt in, but only require the measure only. And from what I understand, that's quite a simple step. In fact, a lot of the projects to date under the energy step code have basically been in compliance with that by reporting on their energy reporting that they do prior to building permit at the design stage. It's simply just click the button, file that report with the province. Is effectively what will happen for the zero carbon step code. So it'll be another very easy step there in our view. So that's it for the overview on that. Is there any questions?
All right, Council, go ahead, Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Troy, do we have any kind of a broad-based marketing opportunity here to mention that we're in this new environment where houses are being built to a real high specification, and giving the contractors an opportunity to pat themselves on the back or learn better about it?
Yeah, I would say that for the most part, that's already happening. We're recognized pretty widely throughout the province as being an early adopter and having good effect. We're quite often called upon to share information about our program and our past successes, and we definitely see that with some of the builders and homeowners also. Kind of bragging, if you will, about the success of their project and sharing that, and some of the builders, promote themselves as having success and experience in that regard. So I would say to some in some ways that's already happening, and it's probably a good point. There's probably more we could do to kind of celebrate what we've been achieving, but on the other hand is. Part of that success is other local governments, other communities are starting to catch up, which is great. It's a whole part of the main reason for the program.
So the updated data would be discussed at the time of the development permit?
Yeah, it's in some cases it's part of the development permit review, but it's ultimately part of the building permit review.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councilor Royer.
So is this for only new houses, or if somebody wants to renovate a house, they have to comply with this also?
At this time, it's new construction only. And there is some efforts around the building retrofit side that would be a separate program.
Further? Councillor Dunneback, you good? Yep. Councillor Woody? You good?
Yeah, I'm fully in support of this.
All right.
I'll make a, sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Cairns.
Thank you. And so it's really nice to see Kimberly staying ahead of the curve and going to step code 4 now while it's voluntary to do that. And, you know, great to build better upfront than to incur retrofits down the road. And I just wanted to highlight that at AKBLG this past weekend, there was presentations from the Community Energy Association, and there's a presentation coming up. Well, there's a couple of presentations coming up on the zero carbon step code. And so I think there's one on May the 9th, another on May the 17th. So there's lots of opportunities to learn about the zero carbon step code. I think it would be really nice. And I did notice that further amendments are anticipated kind of later in the year to this. So I'd be looking for a schedule for how the four steps would be adopted over time up to 2030. The first steps being getting on board with the, you know, heating and hot water with renewable energy. So the fuel switching piece, and because last winter there was a lot of local demonstrations on how effective the heat pumps were for getting through the really cold period. So there's, I think, a lot more confidence in the newer technology. So really nice to see. And I saw Community Energy Association promoting that. And so there is a group that's really specific to this, the BC Climate Leaders. And there's a long acronym. I think it's the BCLMC. Anyway, if anyone is interested, I can forward you the information, but there's lots of great information coming down from that.
All right, thanks for that, Councillor Cairns. I have a couple of comments, I guess. First of all, it has been great how the leadership position we took in going through steps 1 through 3. Those steps really, there was no real cost associated with that. It was mostly sequencing and how, you know, the builders, you know, where they did the testing, you know, for envelope testing, et cetera. I do, however, have concerns about getting ahead of the province as we're moving forward. We talk about affordable housing on one hand, and then on the other hand, we are enforcing kind of energy guidelines ahead of the curve that in fact are going to increase the cost of that housing. And I have some difficulty with that. I personally would like to see us stay lockstep with the province as we're moving forward on this. I just think that this is a balancing act now, and that we can't consider energy efficiency and housing affordability independent of one another. I think they're inextricably tied together. Last call for comments. Go ahead, Councillor Cairns.
Just a comment on further to your comment is there's quite a bit of financial analysis underway around just what it would cost to go that extra step. So I think it's worth keeping up to, you know, having a presentation perhaps on some of the more recent information that's coming out about what the price difference is between the steps.
That'd be cool, but the presentation should come before we pass, pass the motion. Councillor McGuire, go ahead.
Yeah, I hear you on that, Don. So I agree that there could be implications, but I think in this case, as mentioned by the planning department, many of our builders are already at step 4 and exceeding step 4. So I don't think that there will be major impact to the affordability of housing by moving one step ahead of the province.
Go ahead, Troy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few more comments on your point there. And actually, what Councilor McGuire just said there about, I think we can have some comfort in that many of our buildings, or most of our buildings, are already achieving step 4, and I think it really speaks to the program that You know, when you're designing that building and planning that building, there's a lot of key decisions you can make that help to lower the cost of implementing to the whatever step you're building toward. And then of course too, there's that whole the effectiveness of the you know the crews, the staff that are building and making sure they're paying attention to the airtightness of the building envelope and the selection of materials and equipment that's being used. So there's a whole series, and effectively it's a different way of building, and it's not that it's brand new anymore. There's you know, most of the building industry is well aware and now trained and experienced in implementing it. So I would say that over time, I think that the cost of going to the next step has probably decreased relatively. And then the other side of it is you know, of course it can have some cost impacts on the cost of building those new buildings, but it's also about the long-term operational costs and the efficiency of that building and the cost savings over time and the life of that building. And you know, our buildings these are high quality built buildings that are going to last many decades, and it's going to help to lower their operating costs in the long run. And more, you know, homeowners, other you know, folks in the market are now understanding the importance of, you know, maybe spending a little bit more, taking a little bit more time in that design process and the build process to make sure they get there. So I think that the program across the province has had great success in that regard, and here especially.
Yeah, thanks for those comments, Troy. To be clear, the issue I have is not so much with the program, it's with staying ahead of the province. You know, carving out ahead as opposed to, you know, executing as the provincial guidelines are coming in, which guidelines are, you know, the strictest pretty much in the country. Yeah. Okay, further? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Yep. Any opposed? I'm going to oppose that. The motion is carried. Thanks for the good conversation on that, folks. Okay, next up, we have zoning amendment bylaw 2740, which relates to 523 304th Street in Marysville. And the motion on the floor is that council adopt this particular bylaw. Councillor Royer moves, Councillor McBain seconds. Do we have anything to add on this, Troy?
Not too much to add. I'll just clarify and confirm for council that obviously we're clear to proceed with adoption on this one. We were waiting after third reading at the March 27th meeting for confirmation from Ministry of Transportation, and we've since received that on April the 6th. So if council wishes to follow our recommendation, then we can proceed with adoption and they can be on their way. Next steps.
Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Troy. Okay, next up, we have development variance permit, the development variance permit for 849 Deer Run. And the motion on the floor is that council defer decision on the application and request additional plans and details to better understand the potential extent of construction proposed at this particular site. Could I have a mover? Councillor Royer, thank you. And Councillor Karen seconds. So Troy, I'll get you to kind of give a summary of kind of what's up here. And then Chris, I understand you're on the line. Once Troy's kind of given his summary, if you wish to speak, you'll be given an opportunity to do that. Go ahead, Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we've received an application for variance at 849 Deer Run Drive to relax the minimum required setback for a retaining wall on the south side of the property. Council may recall that you've reviewed and considered two previous applications at the adjacent properties of 845 and 841 Deer Run Drive. And those two applications were approved at the February 13th and March 13th meetings, respectively. So this application is, very similar in nature. It's proposing to get approval for retaining wall construction prior to receipt of building permit plans or building permit application. Staff has been working with the applicant to get some additional information about this proposal. Right now, as you can tell from report package there, we just have a initial site plan showing the lot and grading with the proposed retaining wall layout, and again showing the proposed 0 meter setback on the south side of the property. The applicant's been hesitant to provide additional plans, but has essentially insisted that the application be considered by council. I mean, there's probably enough basic information there to proceed with giving notice. Given our consideration of the other two applications, staff's very much, in support of considering a variance for a retaining wall here, similar to what was considered on the other ones. But we just feel that without having a bit more information about the proposed house construction, where it's going to be on the lot, how it's going to fit on the lot relative to the proposed retaining wall, we just feel that the application would be better served by having that information available up front. So with our recommendation to defer, we're hoping that the applicant will, do a little bit more homework on the potential house plan there, so we can better assess how that works, how that'll function with the proposed retaining wall. Might even result in them modifying their retaining wall plan slightly, perhaps not, but that's part of why we want to see the full site plan with the house and the retaining wall as was received and considered on the other two applications.
Thanks for that, Troy. Councillor McBain.
I guess I'm just wondering, Troy, what the concerns are if the if this is going to be an engineered design. There's GeoGrid involved here. That's going to create a certain envelope that obviously the home, any house builder is going to want to avoid once that wall is built, per the plans. But and I get traditionally it's kind of house before the wall. But I'm just not quite sure why it can't be kind of reverse engineered here to suit. I understand. I mean, I get it that traditionally it's nice to have it that way, but it seems to me that you can have that wall design, know where your extents are of your GeoGrid, and design your foundation for the new home to suit the conditions once the wall is in place. And this is just me speaking from my geotech background. It can be done, so I'm just curious to know what the hesitancy is.
Yeah, I think part of what is just driving our questions there and our concern is just the, I mean, it's still a fairly large site and there's lots of room for structure on there. And I think we're having a little challenge visualizing, knowing that most of the houses want to be closer to the street because of that challenging grade on that side of the street to deal with the access challenges, that kind of stuff, right? So we just, like the way the retaining wall plan is showing now, it's, very, towards the very bottom of the slope. And it just seems to us that there may, like you said, the variance could be considered as proposed, and perhaps we'll get approved once we hear any feedback. But we just feel like there's a stronger likelihood that there might be some revision of that plan down the road as the house plans by the current or future owners are contemplated, and then we're back to redoing the variance consideration, I guess, which isn't the end of the world, but we're just hoping that there'd be a little more thought put into the site plan ahead of time.
So, Chris, did you want to make any comments? Please go ahead.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. I'm going through two phone lines here, and phoning from Hong Kong. Sorry about that. Yeah, I woke up this morning kind of shocked for the first time. I received the email notifying me that this was going to be put in front of you guys today. All along, I've been saying that I want to get the variance, and then I can go to the engineers and get the plan drawn up that would be suitable for fairly typical house plans. And of course, I'm going to make sure that it's engineered properly. My main concern is the designers that I've been talking to want to make sure that our walls worked well together with my neighbors. They got approval. Obviously, you're aware that not too long ago that we could, make sure that the walls are working together. So I have full intentions of getting it properly engineered. I don't know why all of a sudden the planners are trying to hold me to a whole new standard, saying I need to have a house design and the footprint and everything else. That's not necessary. I should be fully entitled to develop my lot, and if I wanted to sell it for someone else to build on it, I should be allowed to do that. So, not too sure where the problem is. They say that they support the variance for the reduced setback, yet they want a whole bunch of more information. But I need to go and to make sure I know where I can build the wall before I go and get it engineered. So it kind of seems like it's a little bit backwards that they want me to go and put a whole bunch of money into getting it engineered, and then find out later at a later time that I might not be able to put it right along the borderline. So I'm just asking for the setback, and I will have full engineer designs submitted, and they can approve them or talk about issues with the actual design. They'll still need to have a proper building permits and everything that they can examine at a later time. It seems like logical if the setback variance is obtained first.
Thanks for that, Chris. Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear that we're not expecting full engineered drawings for this before the variance is considered. What we're asking for is, more really conceptual plan of the site plan. So where the house is going to be, where the footprint on the site is going to be relative to the wall, how the location of the proposed wall, how that relates to the proposed location of the house. So it's the very similar level of detail that was provided on the other two applications. Just a simple site plan. One of the applications had more detail about the proposed house for itself, but we're not asking for a full engineering package. We know that will come and will be required as part of the building permit, not at the DVP stage, but we just need the fuller site plan to understand how the house siting relates to the retaining wall siting, and how the grading plan is going to work out. Again, our recommendation is council defer this to get that information. Sounds like the applicant is willing to provide some more information. We're not asking for full-on engineering. That's much more expensive and time-consuming. We're just looking for a simple site plan that they can provide something there and give council something and something more to more properly consider the variance there. But if council wishes, they can proceed with the identified option 2 in the report, which would be to proceed for staff to give notice to neighbors there if you so choose.
All right, thanks, Troy.
It seems like a site plan would require a house plan as well. Like normally you'd have a site plan with a house plan, would you not?
Well, yes, at least plan of the house. So it doesn't have to be full-on building construction plan that would be expected at building permit, but just the conceptual site plan, and we don't need the full elevation drawings necessarily for the house. Sometimes nice to have, but just a more full site plan.
So I have a question, Troy. I think further to Councillor McBain's comments earlier, if the wall goes up first, that will present some restrictions perhaps on the actual design of the house. Right, correct? So what happens in the case, what would happen in the case where Chris actually sold the lot and a new owner came in and was looking to build a house? What's the path forward in a case like that?
Well, I guess it depends a lot on whether, they figure they can work with that retaining wall plan. It could result in them redoing the variance, redoing the retaining wall to better suit the house plan.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So Troy, with not requiring any elevation drawings or anything like that, to me, it's a simple understanding of you're basically looking for a line in the sand, basically drawing just something real simple that he could quite easily send in and then move forward with his project.
Yeah, I mean, we're, like I said, just looking for a bit more site plan information that we can better understand the relationship of the proposed house and the proposed retaining wall.
So not complicated, pretty easily done. Maybe a little time consuming, but part of the procedure.
Yes.
Okay,
Go ahead,
thanks.
please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Troy, I'm still struggling with this. I mean, to me, you know, if a wall gets built and, you know, the proponent decides to sell the property to somebody else, and that next, party comes along, you know, you're buying the property as is and you deal with the hand that you're dealt. And you design a house and put it on there that suits. So I don't know. I'm just struggling with, I don't quite know why we need to have the need to do this. Yeah, that was just a comment.
So the next step in the process would be instructing the corporate officer to issue notice to neighbors. Is it unreasonable to expect that in the course of issuing that notice or going through that step, that Chris, in parallel with that, provides the kind of conceptual drawings required to satisfy, you know, staff's need?
Well, part of the reason why we're asking that for that site plan is so that council can fully consider the proposed variance, and that the site plan can be part of the notice package as we've done on other ones. So if council wishes to proceed with the response option 2, which is giving notice to neighbors, then what would be included with the notice is just the simple retaining wall site plan. That's part of the information here now.
I think in this particular case with, you know, where primarily the neighbors involved, we've gone through this a couple of times already, and I think everybody's in pretty good understanding of kind of what the, you know, what the issues or the solutions are with the wall. I'm just thinking that, you know, expediting is probably not a bad option here, but I'll defer to council. Should we wish to go with that option 2, which is to issue notice to neighbors, we'll need to defeat the motion on the floor. Either way, what I'll do is call the question, and we either defeat it or it's passed, and the application will be deferred. Go ahead, Sandra.
Just as a point of discussion before you do that, I kind of am siding with Jason on this as well. I feel as though you build a wall, you try to build your house in front of it. If you can't build a house in front of it, you sell your property that's got a wall on it. And if he can't build a house in front of it, then he takes the wall down. Like you say, he'd buy what he would get. Right. And I'm more concerned about the fact that they want the wall to be in keeping with the neighbors' walls, and try to keep that in a safe environment and in a manner in which it's useful for all concerned.
Okay, so we've had a pretty robust discussion on this. I'm going to call the question. If the question or the motion passes, it will be deferred. If the motion is defeated, we'll then move to the second option here, which is to instruct the corporate officer to issue notice to neighbors. Is that all clear? Last call for questions on that. Okay, so I will call the question. All those in favor of deferral, raise your hands, please. All those against deferral? Okay, that motion is defeated. Do I have a mover for the next motion, which is to instruct issue to neighbors? Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Dunnebeck, thank you. Call that question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, long discussion on on that one. Thank you for all that, Troy. Anything else needed at this point? We're good?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, we have the draft policy for the Council Code of Conduct. Pardon me. And the motion is the council receive for discussion purposes the draft attached to the report from the corporate officer dated April 24th. So this is for receipt, not adoption. Councillor Royer moves and Councillor McGuire seconds. Discussion. Who do we have that's going to discuss this?
I'll speak. I have been tied up since I received this and I'm unable to give it any attention whatsoever, so I do need time to look at it.
Yeah, we're just receiving it for sure, Sandra. Does anybody want to make any comments? Go ahead, Councillor McBain.
Yeah, I just think this is, it's a step in the right direction for us. I think it provides a framework that we probably all in the back of our heads know that we should have been, that we should be doing. But it's nice to have something prescriptive that that we can fall back on. And so I welcome this, and I think it's a step in the right direction for us.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Royer.
I also agree with Jason. Yeah, this is great. And I think it's going to be good for everybody in their community. And we're all professionals here, and we're going to keep going that direction.
We have not had too many issues here, certainly not in my memory, if ever. But it's strange times we live in for a whole bunch of reasons. And there are many municipalities around the province that don't behave in quite the civil manner that we do around this table. It's only disappointing that it required bad behavior in order to, get everybody on board with one of these. Because it is a good guideline and speaks to the principles that we all espouse. So yeah, we'll be moving forward with this as we go. I think I would like to reiterate what was said at the session that we had where we were pulling this together, and that is that we keep it as simple as we can, straightforward, so that not only we understand what it is, but those in the community can as well. Okay, last call for comments. Go ahead, Sue.
Just thank you, Maurice, for pulling this together so quickly. It's great.
Yeah.
So thank you.
All right, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried.
So I just have a question. What would be your timeline for this coming back to for approval, and how do you want to provide feedback on the document?
Go ahead, Jason.
I was going to ask you, Maurice, how you would want our feedback. Is this something that we can provide outside of council chambers, like through email or what have you, or is this preferred to be in a quorum?
Preferred to be in a quorum.
So what I would suggest is that we take some time, some defined period of time to jot notes down, and then we need to call a special meeting to have that conversation. Go ahead, Jason.
Is a month too long, Maurice? No.
Is it too short? Is the question.
That's for you.
I would propose a month. That's a couple meeting cycles that we have. I think that's a pretty reasonable time frame.
Okay, if you're good with that.
Okay.
That would be the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Anything further, council? Okay, call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, next up under new business, we have the BC Transit Annual Operating Agreement, and the motion on the floor is that the mayor and CAO be authorized to sign the agreement. Thank you, Councillor McBain, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Troy, this is kind of well, it's not an annual event, is it?
Yeah.
I guess it would say annual operating agreement, so that would be a clue, I guess. It feels like this comes around less frequently than that.
Yeah, it's fairly routine. The larger sort of master operating agreement was approved in previous years, and so every year there's an annual operating agreement that kind of just confirms the service level expectations and the key parameters of the budget expectations there. And like I said, it is fairly routine. The budget that forms part of the schedule here to the operating agreement You know, earlier in the planning process, there's a kind of a draft 3-year budget that's provided that we use to work with Jim and prepare the transit components of the overall budget and financial plan. And the numbers here in the annual operating agreement are consistent with those projections there. So there's no need to change those at this time. There's no, you know, otherwise there's no significant changes or anything to service levels. We've been, you know, BC Transit and the operating partner have been working hard to just kind of, you know, continue to maintain good service and try to build up those ridership levels to kind of pre-pandemic levels. And early indications are that those ridership is improving and increasing quite steadily. So it's good, really good to see. And you know, as looking forward, we'll have you know, we can have further conversation about you know, changes in service or other modifications to the system there. So I'll leave it at that for now in case there's questions.
All right, thanks, Troy. Council. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor McBain.
No, I think this is, thanks Troy for, you know, keeping us surprised to this. I'm just really, I'm excited that this is at the forefront with respect to from the province. I mean, I think there's just there should be a recognition that, you know, even given where we are, it's a rural community. You know, there's a lot of interplay between not only within your municipality, but within other municipalities. I know we're somewhat unique with how the proximity to Cranbrook, but just the you know, a lot of shared employment with people going back and forth. So it's really cool that you know, this type of plan is in place, and I'm just look forward to seeing what the future holds with respect to energy transition and so forth. Thanks, Troy.
Thank you for those comments. Anything further, Council? Quick comment from me then. In particular, the Kimberley Cranbrook or the Cranbrook Kimberley commuter has proven to be, I think, overall a big success. It's unfortunate that COVID got in the way, because I think we would have seen an increase to that level of service, either in terms of a bigger bus or more frequency before and now. I know anecdotally, I've heard comments from those using the bus that there are concerns that when that bus is full, heading down in the morning, there is fear that they may not be able to get on the bus to get a ride home. And any transit service that you have to be able to have a 360 degree connection. So I would like to see us at some point, you know, in the not too distant future, having a conversation about what our expectations are for not just that commuter service, but, you know, throwing in the other couple of services with the, you know, hospital service, et cetera, as well. Reviewing what our strategies are, or what we see as our strategies for that would be a good idea. No specific timeline on that, I don't think, Troy. We're renewing the agreement. We're building ridership as it stands right now. So if that can kind of find its way, you know, off the corner of the desk sometime in the not too distant future, that'd be awesome. Whichever corner. Yeah, there's 4 corners to that desk. Okay, last call for comments. Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, next up, we have the Small Housing BC Gentle Density Partnership Funding Request. And the motion is that Council authorize the Manager of Planning to enter into an agreement with Small BC Housing to undertake a project focused on developing local understanding and ability to realize new housing units that take advantage of the availability and affordability zoning amendments that were passed by Council this past September. Councillor Roberts moves and Councillor Royer seconds. Troy, lead us on.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we're kind of excited about this potential project here. Been having some conversations with the group at Small Housing BC, who, you know, they were kind of following along with the work that we did and had adopted last year with the housing availability and affordability amendments. And those discussions led into the project outline here that you see attached to the report. So basically what we can see happen here is get some really good basically external support here to try to help us sort of further develop the local understanding and awareness of what those amendments mean and the opportunities that are provided there to see more housing built in our existing neighborhoods and in new neighborhoods. It's going to take a look at kind of developing some basic case studies, if you will, for a few different scenarios using modeling on kind of a few different examples of lots within the R2 zone, and develop some potential kind of pro formas and start to kind of break down where some of those hurdles and barriers are to seeing some of these projects created. So it'll largely be the external consultant of Small Housing BC that'll be helping us with that. Fairly minimal staff time involved. There's a few different stages over the next number of months that we're going to be helping and participating in that. But this is stuff that they've been working with other communities on similar projects, but this one is unique to us. And we think that it has the potential to like I said, help to improve awareness and break down some of those obstacles that we're hearing about from certain folks, and that includes average homeowners that might be looking at the potential in their lot and how to create more housing on it. Smaller, medium-sized builders that might see opportunities there to work with property owners, or might have property themselves that they want to see developed. And I think another unique aspect too that we've identified is that sometimes there's just in some of the lending requirements or the policies around financing some of these projects, there's often some hurdles there, whether it's just just people not being aware and how to plan and prepare for that. And even sometimes challenges on the financing side of just around policy and what that means, and just making sure they're aware that as a community we support seeing more housing and want to encourage projects like that in our neighborhoods. So we're hopeful that council supports us moving forward on that.
All right, thanks, Troy. We actually have an example, early example to look to, and that's the Lois Park or the Lois Creek development up on Fernie Street, where it started out, I think, with the phase 1 of 12 units that once reviewing the bylaw, they now have 17 units that are going on exactly the same footprint. So that would be a good example of what we're talking about here. Councillor Roberts.
Oh, thank you. This is really exciting. I think it's a bit of a gap that we've had in quite not knowing what to do about it or what to do with it, as much as we all think it's a wonderful idea. I'm really looking forward to what they learn and how they're able to kind of publicize the options and take advantage of the changes that we made to the bylaw recently. This is pretty cool. Councillor Ogilvie will be tickled pink.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Further comment? Go ahead, Sue.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Roberts. I think it's really nice to see this piece, that step of getting out into community and having some workshops and some examples for people to see so they can visualize this on their own property, and that support for people, and especially some advice around the financing piece, and builds a nice pathway for people. So I'm really happy to see this. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those comments. Last call.
Sorry for that, Don. I think education is the power tool here. I think this is really going to let the public know that what's really going on here. Now I understand. So education is power, and I like it. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you for those comments. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay. Almost last up tonight is the check run in the amount of $528,846 to be approved as paid. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Cairns moves. Councillor Royer seconds. Comments? Anything
Isn't it, it's
appears
pretty,
to be untoward?
pretty regular.
Regular
Nothing, nothing
items?
untoward.
Okay, awesome. We'll take your word for that, Sandra. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, next up, we have items 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3 to be received as correspondence. Mover, please. Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Roberts, seconds. Any comments or items that you wish to highlight, Council? Go ahead, Councillor Roy.
So I've read all the letters and on the 2.2, and the thing that comes to my mind is, it's great to see that the community cares of what happens in their community. And, all these letters that are all coming in, it's the first time I've seen that many, that volume, and since I've been on council. So it's great to see that people are sharing their point of view and everything. I have no problems with that whatsoever.
Awesome. Thanks for the comments. Councillor Royer. Go ahead, Sandra.
I was taken by item 2.1, which is the information coming to us about having finally been billed for the retroactive pay for the RCMP, which was settled in 2021. It's good to know that we saw it coming. We were informed what it was. We have the money in reserve, but I can't believe it's taken so long for them to ask for it.
There are a lot of municipalities in the province that are in terrible shape when it comes to addressing this particular issue.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we've had such good money management
kudos
here.
to, to staff
Yeah.
for getting ahead of this one, developing the reserve so that we're not caught at this point. Some of the stories out there are pretty ugly. Further comments? Call the question. All those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? Thank you. That motion is carried. Okay, next up is question period. So we have a couple of folks in council tonight. Do either of you have any questions or comments on anything you heard this evening? Okay, so while we go through councillor items, I will say that anybody listening online that wishes to comment or have a question on anything covered in the agenda this evening, you are welcome to call, and the number is 800-741-7180. And when prompted, the meeting number is 2771-327-0421. So please call now. And while we are waiting to see if anybody has any questions from our online stream, we'll go around the table. Would you like to go first, Councillor McBain? There's a tendency, I'm told, that people that are right-handed always go to their right first, but I don't know.
Right.
Left is comfortable.
Okay.
Way you go.
Yeah, for official business, I've got a health center board meeting tomorrow. So I can probably give at our next meeting, I can give some updates there. Attended the celebration for the Dynamiters on, what day was that? Saturday. Yeah, I just wanted to say just a quick little bit about that. Really impressive what that team did this year. I think a lot of folks, I was talking to some of the players, and recognizing that it's at the junior B level, you play a much shorter season with respect to games, but with playoffs, it's the exact same format that major junior teams, NHL, like professional leagues play. They played a ton of games in a really short amount of time, and to come back from 3 down to Fernie, really incredible. And I'm really hoping that when it's the KI's turn to be considered or be considering this the Cyclone Taylor Cup, they start looking at attendance numbers and engage in community engagement, and recognize that this would be a pretty good spot to have it, given the trajectory of the team the success that we've had and our building. So congratulations to those guys. And it was really, it was an honor to attend.
Yeah, awesome. That would be, of course, contingent on safe glass and boards. Councillor Royer.
I'm happy to announce that I attended the AKBLG convention, and my head is still spinning to this day, but I just want to give a couple highlights that I really got out of it. I was quite intrigued by the resolutions they had on the table. I didn't realize that you could make a difference by going up a higher level to submit something to the provincial government at this meeting. So I learned something brand new on the weekend. And another thing that stood out with me was the accessibility committee, which I'm going to be forming very shortly. I have got all the info that I need. So I'm really excited about it. I got people just gung-ho to join this committee. So really looking forward to going forward with this. So I would highly recommend other councillors to attend this seminar. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Royer. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too took the opportunity to participate this week in the Association of Kootenay Boundary Local Governments. They come together once a year from the region from Valemont South over to Fernie and over to Grand Forks. So fair bunch of rural and villages and cities within that bunch, all of whom participate, all of whom are elected officials. And it was a very well-constructed presentation this time. I found as though one thing led into another, which led into another, and there's been some very interesting dynamics kind of put in front of us, not the least of which was civic leadership and finding ways to deal with this major dance of polarization that we have, where people want to either be black or white without much room for discussion in the middle. And as a civic leader, it's really hard for us to be black and white because we're representing both the blacks and the whites and a whole bunch of gray in between. And so we talked about how we had to foster that social cohesion as a cornerstone to the kind of leadership that we've been has been postured upon us by being elected. So it was a really fruitful discussion for us. I brought back a couple of papers to share with others because I thought there was some really good information there that should help us do our job way better.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Sandra. Sue.
Thank you. I also was at AKBLG this weekend and agree with both Steve and Sandra. And yeah, the conversations on, what is just conflict, your regular conflict versus when we dive into more polarized views and how to stay in that place of productive, creative conflict where we're curious, asking questions and staying open. I think that whole aspect of when we tend to want to retract to counter that with being curious is a really key characteristic or property that will help us practice, that will help us engage more effectively. So I thought we had excellent presentations on that piece. So that's all on AKBLG that I'm going to say. I wanted to mention Center 64, probably Scott, I think you've already had conversations, but they've mentioned to me in passing around their heating bill for $7,000 for the winter when the furnace was in trouble, and that they're seeking support that they can't afford to pay the bill. So wanted to raise that. Maybe we can have a conversation at some point. I'm not sure how it's being addressed, but they had to use their electric space heaters to heat in December, January, and they're looking for support. And the next item was on April 14th, I attended the Old Growth Strategy session, which was hosted by UBCM. So the province is, seeking, it's really important, seeking local government participation in shaping the future of forestry in the province. And so for folks who missed that and would like to participate, there's another session on Zoom May 2nd, and I can circulate that by email. So a big part of the conversation was about community supports for transition to different different lines of work, different industry. And so it's a full shift that's happening there where we're moving from a forestry that was focused on what we take to look at now what stays on the land to support water, air, community security and resilience to climate change. So there's so much change happening right now. So the province is looking to create kind of local area tables, multidisciplinary tables to come together to talk with Indigenous nations, industry, all of the local stakeholders and community to kind of shape the path ahead. The other item of note was the poverty reduction strategy that is open until April the 30th. And I wanted to note, I have been hearing from teacher friends just how, these schools tend to be the catch-all when other social services aren't addressing things. Kids come to school and the teachers really are seeing, of course, the how stretched families are and what kind of state kids come to school in, and really working hard to kind of create a safe environment where kids are fed and feel well cared for. So it really struck me just the level of suffering in our community, and wanted to highlight that if people are aware of people who are really struggling, it's important that people with lived experience fill out that poverty reduction strategy to speak about the kinds of supports that would be the most valuable to them. And so, yeah, the province is asking people to support people who are in that situation to fill out the survey and make their input. And then the final piece I'll mention is just Moose Hide Day is May 11th, and that is a pledge to end silence on violence against women and children. It really started within the Indigenous community, Highway 16, and a father and his daughter saying, we're not going to be quiet anymore. This is part of the truth. This is part of the truth and reconciliation, and that this story needs to be told. So it expanded beyond Indigenous communities to everybody, and really encouraging that kind of peer support to not be quiet about things when we see them, to actually speak up and use our voice. So I don't have it on tonight, but when you see people with the moose hide, I've got lots of them in case anyone would like one. Okay. And so we actually will have an event in the Plattsville. It's on May the 16th rather than the 11th because the drummer wasn't available on the 11th. So 11 a.m. on the 16th, there is a drumming event. And actually on the Moose Hide campaign homepage is Kimberly Platzel, last year's event. And Smokey Sumac, I don't know if folks are familiar, Tunaka wisdom holder who speaks about what a difference it makes to see that community support, know you're in a safe place. So and I can't remember the name of the drummer right at the moment, but he's really excellent as well. So anyway, it's the
Awesome.
community support. That's all for me.
Cool. Thank you, Sue. Woody from Denver.
Hello. Yeah, felt like a full week as well for me. As mentioned, the AKBLG was over the weekend, and that was attended by 4 councillors as well as the mayor. It's a really great opportunity to connect with other communities and see what work is going on across the province in different municipalities, and share in the challenges that each of our communities are facing. I found it really helpful. I also participated in a CBT meeting about their strategic trajectory over the next 4 years, which was a really interesting conversation and touched on a lot of various different things that are happening within our community and the grants that CBT can offer to support our community. As well, I also attended a meeting with councillors from across Canada, actually talking about the building code across Canada. Right now, the national building code is essentially following in BC's footsteps and putting in place an energy step code that looks much like what we've already been implementing over the past few years. And they're also considering the carbon step code that we voted on tonight, implementing step 1. So they haven't even developed that yet, but they are about to implement the energy step code. So congratulations to us for being ahead of the game on that, as well as to the BC government for being ahead of the other provinces. Just the Moose Eye campaign was great last year. I helped coordinate that, and we'll be there as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's on the 16th. Other than that, I have nothing to report.
Well, that was a fair amount to report, Woody. Thank you for that. Councillor Dunneback has left the building, so we'll catch up with Kevin at the next meeting. And I've got a couple of highlights. The monthly regional district meeting on the 13th and 14th, kind of business as usual, not much to report back that has any kind of implications for us. I had a couple of provincial nominee program meetings. One was a candidate site visit that's looking at an institutional business here in Kimberley, and the other was another candidate who happened to be in Kimberley. It wasn't a specific site visit, but he happened to be here, has relatives here in town, that's looking at a retail restaurant opportunity. AKBLG, as the other four have mentioned, was a solid menu, and I think everybody rather enjoyed it, got lots out of it. I'm not sure the number of attendees. It was actual elected officials was probably in the neighborhood of 100 to 110, something like that. There were also a number of CAOs that were in attendance, and the presentations were presenters and the presentations were really top notch. They managed to pull off another good one. Jason's already talked about the Dynamiter celebration. It was interesting to note, I was asking one of the board members about season tickets. It would have been nice. I wanted to buy a season ticket on Saturday when we were there. So over the course of the season, Kimberley averaged about 800 fans per game, roughly, plus or minus. And only about 250 or 270 of those are season ticket holders. So that is a huge walk up for every game. It would be really nice, and I certainly encourage, as a season ticket holder myself, for all of those fans who are doing the walk up, buy the season ticket. It's the best entertainment value in town. It's like $200 for 25 games or something like that. I mean, it really is great value, and we're very, very proud of the team. As part of my regional district responsibilities, I also sit on the CBT board, and as such, have been kind of moving around the communities in the basin at these at the community engagement sessions. I've been to Sparwood, Canal Flats. I'm off to Creston tomorrow, and of course attended Kimberley. The consolidation of all of that with respect to not just our community, but the basin as a whole, and what the strategic priorities are going to be, should be out for review sometime at the end of the summer or early fall. I'm thinking September, perhaps. I also had a couple of Treaty Advisory Council committee meetings. The negotiations between the province and the Ktunaxa with respect to the expected treaty have been postponed indefinitely by the Ktunaxa. It's more or less kind of an internal thing, and we're not expecting that there's going to be any movement on treaty negotiations for quite some time. And finally, I had a number of about a half a dozen calls that I made with the developers that have multi-unit residential rental projects on the go. Those are probably the single most important housing projects that we have. And, my goal is just to make sure that, they are continuing to advance as fast as possible. Okay, that's the highlight. Maurice.
We have no callers.
No callers. Okay, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Unless there is further comment, from anybody, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Royer, thank you. And Councillor McBain seconds. Councillor Dunleback isn't here to take the lead on this one tonight. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Thanks, Woody. Appreciate you zooming in. And thanks, folks. We appreciate everybody being here tonight. Have a good evening.